So he has to have the discipline here to equalize early in this game. We are underway, ladies and gentlemen. What does MVL have to bring to the table? Another Berlin endgame. All right, here we go.
It's been a real debate in the Berlin so far today. Maxime here, he's going to be hoping that he can achieve something similar to what he achieved a few games ago, where he got a very promising position with white, ultimately not able to make anything of it. But if he can force Firouzja to think, the lack of increment, as you allude to there, Danya, could be decisive. White's knight now gets a nice launching pad in the center, the d5 square. And back in the day, this used to be considered a huge gain for white. White would often maneuver around for a long, long time just to get a knight on a square like this. But these days, you can work around it. You can live with a knight entrenched in your half as black. And this is the idea. You put a pawn on g5, you often fee in Kertz, the black dart squared bishop, and still hard for white to improve the position as we see MVL frown. Daniel, what do you think? Good opening choice in an Armageddon?
For Maxime?
For either player, for Maxime.
For Firouzja, yes. I think clearly he's done his homework during the break period. I mean, both players have done their homework. They blitzed out this series of moves. But I'm already worried for Maxime because there is a finite amount of tactical resources here. And if, as you so expertly pointed out, Alireza is able to dodge the landmines and consolidate and kind of work around this knight, then eventually, sometimes white just runs out of active ideas. So Maxime, he has to invest some time here and make sure that he channels this game in the right direction. It's a big trap to over-focus on the time advantage and try to keep it at all costs. Your allegiance has to be primarily to the situation on the board, David. But you're absolutely right. In the old days, unthinkable to allow a knight to d5. Black would resign, the moment a stallion landed on this square in the endgame. But just the concept of working around a particular piece without trying to chase it away, because you can't. I mean, c6 runs into knight b6. Maybe you can go rook a6 and c6, but I don't think Alireza is in a huge hurry to do that. I do think he has to be very careful. Bishop g7 might run into g4. Our old friend, got to keep an eye on these sudden pawn moves. So far, so good for the Frenchman with two names.
Yeah, great choice there by Firouzja. Hoping for a trade of knights there on black's terms. Instead, MVL does start asking tactical questions, which he needs to do at some point. He started with almost 3-minute time advantage. It's now down to around 2. And he changes the pawn structure on the king side. He's aiming to go around with that white knight, I guess. But it does feel like if black gets a couple more moves, if black's able to move the black knight, Fianchetto the black dart square bishop, super solid. So this is his idea, Vachier Lagrave. He's aiming to construct a really nice pawn structure for white. And en passant, not forced. It was tempting. But what do you make of this? It's a pawn sacrifice, Daniel.
This is so deep. And how on earth did he come up with this in like the span of 5 seconds? He's telling Alireza, take my pawn. I don't care about the H-pawn. I'm focused instead on building just a completely impervious and very scary central construction. So, having said Peter, you kind of have to say Paul, or maybe not, because knight takes h4, David, allows the white knight to maneuver to g3. And then you run into a completely different set of problems where you can't move your knight back to f5. Not because of knight e4. And I'm going to show this really quickly. Takes knight g3. We might see Alireza accept the sacrifice. If you try to move back, you lose on the spot. Takes. And e6, the same idea that MVL carried out in their first Berlin endgame, here with a much more powerful effect. Black simply loses the game. Rook moves and you just go e7, and there is hell to pay for the fact that your other rook is not in the game. David, what a move. And guess what? 5 minutes with no increment. This is a huge moment.
Huge moment. Yeah, it's sale season here with that clearance sacrifice, f5, e6 on tap there. Firouzja, he might well just want to sit, but ultimately, eventually, the white knight will trade off the black knight, and bishops are not great blockaders, so the bishop pair here, not as impressive as they usually are in endgames in open positions. I really love what MVL's done. I've got to say, so tricky, so resourceful, as you mentioned, but that is kind of his calling card at the moment, and if white gets 1 or 2 more moves, g3, king f2, then I really think black's going to struggle for the rest of the game. So rook to a6. Is this in conjunction with c6 your idea? Nice spot for the rook, but where next?
I mean, perhaps the ideal strategy is to sit, but I don't think Alireza can stand that. He definitely can't stand the knight on d5 any longer. I think he is preparing the move c6, or at least he's hinting at it, and maybe forcing MVL to do something rash. g3 on the board. Lots of options for black suddenly. Knight d4, excellent move. Heads up decision by Firouzja. Can't take twice, obviously, because of bishop c5. And suddenly the pendulum appears to have swung in the other direction again.
Wow, really clever move there. Knight to d4. He's also waited really kind of cleverly. He's waited for the f3 square to appear as well for the black knight, just in case you want to park up on that post. And how does white actually defend the queen side suddenly? The b3 pawn is attacked. You might have to contort your rook somehow, or you might start getting hit around the board. Rook d3 already runs into bishop to f5 and no good squares for the white rook. Yeah, opportunistic from Firouzja, but both players showing off their tactical awareness.
I can see MVL, given the context, sacking the pawn, but that would be probably too dangerous because you give up the b3 pawn and it's a chain reaction. The c4 pawn then becomes weak, c6 becomes much stronger. Knight d2 is excellent decision-making by Maxime. He's so good at making these moves and accepting the reality of the position. Is it pretty? No. Do you want to play knight d2? Not really, but at least you neutralize the immediate threat. Rook b6 can now be met with rook a3, and somehow white is able to cling on to this pawn on b3. If you can ward off the immediate threats, David, white's got some threats of his own. Don't play bishop c3. Very easy to blunder this fork, but I think you have to keep this pawn defended, and he does so tactically. Fantastic move. Knight takes b3, bishop c3 will drop in exchange.
Wow, great X-ray vision there. The black rook on b6 undefended. So the blue arrow does appear and says, it's time. Complete your development, Alireza. Bishop to e7 allows the black rook in the other corner, the h8 rook, to join the action. Instead, he moves his king. But this walks into bishop c3 later. Not yet, as you pointed out. But king f2,
don't miss the fork.
Okay, he's trying to defend his rook. So king f2, what happens? Oh, there's f5 in the air. The black knight is actually performing a dual purpose. Cannot munch on the b3 square.
I was holding my breath there, David, but you're absolutely right. Knight takes b3. Wow, bishop c3 and bishop takes a5 also in the air. That king on c7 suddenly gets caught in the crossfire. And Alireza is facing another enemy at his door. He's got 3 minutes. There is no increment in the Armageddon format. Bishop c3 has arrived. Uh-oh, knight e4. Here he comes.
Oh, it's turning. Firouzja did give a bit of a shake of the head. He knows he's had to put his rooks on some awkward squares now. White still needs a plan. Knight e4 needs some calculation. You are giving the b3 pawn away, but not. Ultimately it's the white central pawns. Yeah, or not, Danya. He's just in the flow, Maxime Vachier Lagrave, right now.
Amazing. And if black takes on b3, I think Alireza stopped at f5. That's got to be devastating. This position is devastating. I think black is simply falling apart.
Oof, yeah, the knight, that was black's pride and joy, but it was attacked, has stepped back, and even trading looks very strong. King e3. The black dart square bishop is not going to take part in the rest of this game. It's just a bystander. The black rooks look a bit silly, to be honest. So, yeah, moves like rook to b2 come to mind as well, just to get off the diagonal, to trade knights in a maybe more favorable way. I don't see black's next move, Danya. Other than a trade of knights, what is black actually doing in the next half dozen moves?
Yeah, now he has no choice but to sit. I mean, the goal here for black is to maintain his control over the f5 square. Maxime is keeping the tension, and obviously he's playing the clock, but knight c2 feels like he chose the vanilla flavor when there were a lot of other exciting flavors. I'm shocked he didn't trade the knights at least to soften, David, the blockade on the f5 square. This comes as a great relief to Alireza, who, by the way, can potentially initiate counterplay at the right moment with b5. Is Maxime now going in the wrong direction by trading off a pair of rooks?
It does feel that way. If all of the rooks disappear, if black's able to play a move like b6 and then later trade off the rooks, we could well see a fortress. And even with 2 minutes on the clock, you can pre-move a fortress and hold there, especially if you're a bullet maestro like Alireza. So you kind of need to break through here and now, Danya. You need something concrete to test Firouzja with before he gets the move rook to d8.
Yeah, 3 extra minutes is not going to give you the win automatically. Let's not have 2 minutes and 40 seconds in a dead drawn position. Alireza could probably hold a fortress type situation with 40 seconds on his clock. Maxime, he sleepwalked his way through those critical moments where he could have taken on f5. Maybe he didn't realize how much better he was or he thought that he could sort of keep the status quo and milk Alireza's clock down, but he's frittered away his entire advantage. Now bishop takes d6 is automatic. The other bishop should slide back to e6, though. David, this is critical for Alireza, not to allow rook f6, undoing the blockade. He wasn't born yesterday. This is easy clap for him. The king is coming to e4, though, so even in the event of a rook trade, it's not an elementary draw.
Wow, so close to a fortress, but a rook trade. If white gets the move f5, he might still be winning rook e8. Oh, wow, he's trying to build that fortress, Daniel. Point out the tactics there.
Black is going to play f5. He's defending the bishop, and f5 is essentially a pre-move for black. I think Maxime is now officially desperate. Maybe he should play f5 first, just to try to spice things up here. But king e4, f5, I'm going to put these moves on the board to show people that you cannot take on passant. And actually, you narrowly avoid checkmate here. Bishop e5, you have the d7 square. I think we're going to go to a grand finals reset here, unless MVL can find an earth-shattering idea quickly. He needs Alireza to blunder. Great decision by Maxime. David, remember, this is Armageddon. A draw and a loss are absolutely equivalent.
Great practical play. We saw the eval bar slightly on white side, but that's because computers still, to this day, slightly underestimate fortresses. If black got that f5 move himself, blocked up the king side, dead draw, and 2 minutes would have been sufficient. So Maxime a pawn down now. He's even allowing the whole of white's queen side to fall if the black bishop comes into the c2 square, but he doesn't care. He's initiating a race, and look at Alireza, uncomfortable on the clock. The hardest thing to do, Dania, I mean, you play a lot of speed chess. The hardest thing is facing a race where it's just random and you're just guessing and you have no time on the clock.
And that's the thing, right? Why is that extra time valuable? Not just inherently, but because MVL can actually pause when things get super tactical and he can do some serious calculation. Alireza does not have that luxury. He has to manage his time. He has to calculate something. He can't just, bullet out the rest of the game. He's down to 90 seconds. He plays rook e7, and here we go. We're going to get the race. Black will have a lot more pawns. But as Mr. Hess likes to say, it ain't about the quantity of passed pawns. A single passed pawn can defeat an entire army. I am getting really scared for black here. Also because, David, the bishop on c3 could potentially control the promotion square, and that could become very significant.
It covers the white h pawn's promotion square. It covers the black a pawn's promotion square, that white bishop. And here we go. The race even has been initiated. Shout out to Robert Hess there. It's the white h pawn that looks far quicker at this sprint, Dania. h5, h6. You can pre-move as white, but Firouzja's under 1 minute now as black.
He's got 60 seconds to prosecute this endgame. You're fighting Maxime. You're also fighting the clock. There is no increment, folks. He's got 56 seconds. He's got to get down to business, and he is. I think he can pull it off, David. I think Alireza is actually in pretty good shape here because why did he put a bishop on e6? To prevent white from pushing e6, but he goes king d7. Eval bar shoots up. Should MVL close his eyes and start pushing? Is it push time?
It might well be. Just you have to do it at some point. Why not start now? Other moves, he could just initiate a trade. No, he plays bishop to b6. So black's pawns are stuck temporarily on the queen side. I see the logic here, but the more pawns that disappear, the closer we get to that draw that will give Firouzja the reset. So rook to a8 now. The white bishop struggling to hold the tide, but the bar rises, Dania. h6. It must be h6 now.
And it is. I mean, MVL is not going to take the bait. Firouzja's decision there was understandable to play c5, trying to goad the bishop to get off of a3, but it's just going to sit there for eternity. 39 seconds. Firouzja realizing that the situation has gotten critical. MVL is on the doorstep here. He's going to go h7. He's going to tie down the rook. Now he can take on c5, and he does. Look at the confidence that he's playing with, David. The g-pawn is going to get involved as well. This has to be winning now on the board for Maxime.
It's all about the speed. The black a pawn is going precisely nowhere. Even if it costs white the bishop later on, Maxime will distract the black king. And like you said, g5, g6 is on autopilot. That black bishop is not stable forever. The black rook is super passive. 18 seconds. Even on the board, if he survives the clock, it's over.
Push, push, push. h7. You can't go a3. Got to go back to h8. The rook slides over to h6 just in time. That's it. I mean, even if MVL were losing here, he would win this with black just on the clock. It's all over.
12 seconds.
g7.
The black rook is doomed. And There we go. Maxime Vachier Lagrave is the winner of the CRUNCHLABS Masters after taking down Alireza Firouzja in the Armageddon. And wow, he deserves it. You've got to say, Danya, nerves of steel from Vachier Lagrave. Even when it looked like he was about to be shut out with that fortress, he still found a way, a sign of a true champion. But just both players in banging form, both producing high-level chess right to the final day here.